Jorrison and De Beer Street in Braamfontein, in Johannesburg, where a man was shot and killed.
From close range, getting ahead.
There's no need for it. And there's need for us to get involved in different ways and methods of calming and stabilizing a situation. It is not the latest victim, but you'll also recall there's a young boy called Leo from the West Coast who was also shot, and 2 weeks later died of his wounds caused by rubber bullets. So no, certainly we don't need that in our society. Well, there are the three levels of stabilizing a situation. But I think also the fourth one, which we'd like to introduce, is sit down and talk to the leaders and talk to the representatives and bring calm and make sure that there's a dialogue or negotiations, a talk about it, and not say, I give you 5 minutes, disperse, but sit down and listen. And there's a method that we use in the Western Cape, which is very successful in some parts of the Western Cape, where we, through negotiations and through discussions, we bring down the level of unrest, at the same time start talking and bring people around table. Obviously, there are some international condemnation and moves to have rubber bullets banned and declared, as an unnecessary use of force. But the police are correct. There are sometimes you find that there are criminal elements that influence and infiltrate the protests and doesn't want to listen to reason. But we've seen, for example, 2 weeks ago in Grabo, the moment when we started talking to the leadership, the moment when we engaged the leadership, they had to go and along with the police go and disperse the crowds.
The long and the short of the story, from as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the one critical thing, just to point out here, is that in the police sort of regulations, they call them national instructions. They actually simply don't have a clear instruction on the standards that police are supposed to apply when they're using rubber bullets. And so, there's obvious, very serious omission. I mean, I would call it a case of serious negligence on the part of the management of the police and potentially of government, in that they've failed to properly regulate the manner in which police use rubber bullets. So and the result of that is almost that the police treat them as they almost treat them like toys. They treat them as something that they can use without real concern about the potential harm that they will cause. And so you have them being used very widely when there should be much stricter control over how they are used. Having said that, I think that it would be a mistake to ban them. I think that, for instance, if you look at Marikana, in fact, I mean, and it's actually in the Marikana Commission report, is that if weapons of that kind, including rubber bullets, had been deployed effectively at Marikana, one wouldn't have had a situation where 34 people had been killed. So they can be used in a way where they are used effectively to minimize and avoid using much more destructive types of force.
Police members are on their own. With regard to the recent issues, there is an issue of the Falam Commission, which have the recommendation of Falam Commission. And this recommendation is very clear as to how police must conduct protests, must conduct themselves in protests and in marches. There is a recommendation from panel of experts that is before the minister that talk about the bill that must be approved by Parliament on the policing during this kind of a protest. That recommendation has not been implemented. It's more than 2 years now that we do not see the recommendation, or we don't even see that bill. You ask yourself one question: why? You look into the Falam Commission recommendation. It is very clear what must be used when the police deal with protesters, marches and everything, even when protesters are violent. And police went on what you call the command and control. The police officers who attend these scenes, they don't take these rubber bullets on their own. They are issued with the rubber bullets. Yes, of course, we understand and the situation in terms of what the public are saying about the rubber bullet. And we also understand the fact that this country comes from a very bad history with regard to how the police worked during the period of the apartheid, or during the era of the apartheid. But with regard to this recommendation, the person who must implement it is not the police. It is the government themselves, the very same people who are today apologizing to the public about the issue of police brutality are the people who must implement the recommendation of what needs to be done. It is not only the rubber bullet. That recommendation is very clear to say the helicopters must be there, the video cameras must be there, the loud hailers must be there, the recording of all the event must be there, so that when there are events like this, we are not going to blame or rely on a 5 minutes or 2 minute clip. We must rely on everything that happened so that the action of the police can be justified. And if they cannot be justified, what is it that the police did wrong? So that the police must take full responsibility and accountability of what happened at the scene. So yes, we understand the outcry of the public outside there. The question is, what can be done? Because I don't think the police have the capacity to deal with all the protesters in this country, all the protesters, or all the situation with regard to the labor protest, the student protest, the service delivery protest. So police are not adequate enough to deal with that, as much as we understand the outcry of the public.
There needs to be much greater control over their use. And unfortunately, the police just haven't even woken up to the fact that the manner in which they're approaching the control of these weapons is completely inadequate. And so there hasn't been any substantive engagement from police management or the Minister of Police himself about how these weapons are being used, and the standards that are being applied in relation to how they're used.
Even if you take police officer for training, it is not only about training. It's about it's about what one called manpower. It's about the capacity, human resource. I want that word. It's about the human resource. If there is enough human resource, then we'll be able to deal with policing. But you can train them all. But if you don't have enough police officers, we are not going to be able to deal with not only the crime, but the protesters. So yes, there is an issue of training, but that issue is fueled more by the issue of lack of human resource in the police environment.
We need to constantly involve ourselves in training, at the same time also learning from the best practices elsewhere in the world. But also thirdly is the issue about attitude. How if you just see the crowd as an unnecessary nuisance, criminals, or people that needs to force them to disperse, give them 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's not always useful. So the attitude towards the crowd, because some people have got legitimate reasons, legitimate grievances, and unfortunately get sometimes hijacked by criminals.